You said before that nothing riles Indians more than the idea that the Indian government is getting bullied by a foreign leader or foreign government. How are you analyzing the dynamics in these trade talks between the US and India?
So, first of all, thank you very much, Haslinda, for having me on your show. That said, India was initially amongst the first countries to set off on a trade deal. They have a rather ambitious agreement between Trump and Prime Minister Modi about 500 million by 2030 in terms of bilateral trade. It's around 200 million right now. So, and they also thought they'll have an early harvest by autumn when Trump is set to visit India for the Quad summit. That said, things have changed since February. We now have multiple elements in a trade negotiation, which has made it more complex. We have reciprocal tariffs. We have sectoral tariffs. So the Indian negotiators are right now in Washington. The Indian government hopes to have a beautiful big deal. But, there are challenges, as was mentioned, in terms of agriculture, in terms of dairy products, because India has never had any trade agreement which covers these two areas. And of course, genetically modified fruit. But the primary challenges are in terms of dairy and agricultural products.
So it's challenging, it is complicated, yet we've heard a lot of optimism from the likes of Vice President J.D. Vance, also from Howard Lutnick. I'm just wondering whether that optimism is misplaced, or is there reason to think we will see a deal before the deadline?
So the deadline is only for the reciprocal tariffs, which is 26% in India's case. Yes, there is a lot of optimism in the Indian side, too, that they will make it. There's hard negotiations going on. And, it's good to have people posture. The challenge, of course, for the Indian side is not to give up too much right now because, trade deals always have an impact on the population. We don't have many elections in India this year, so that's a saving grace. There's only one election coming up in November. So this is perhaps the best time for the Modi government to go in for reform, go in for a trade deal, a big, beautiful trade deal, if I were to use President Trump's word. And I think there is a lot of optimism in India that it will pull through despite difficulties. And if you won't have a full-fledged thing right now, they'll look for early harvest in October, November. So what they're looking right now is to try and see whether the reciprocal tariffs are off the table and that there is no further change in the sectoral tariffs, because President Trump has the habit of bringing in new tariffs. For example, there are sectoral tariffs on automobiles, there are sectoral tariffs on iron and steel. So I think the negotiations now are that once this deal is done, there won't be any further tariffs on the table until the early harvest in October, November.
As you suggested, Trump has indicated it is a test of reciprocity. It does seem, though, to a lot of people that India seems to be making more concessions than the U.S. Is that your own impression as well?
Sure, that's bound to happen because there is a feeling in India, too, that the tariff rates were higher than elsewhere. We've had these challenges with other countries, too. So it's not that it's new to India that there is this pressure on India to reduce tariffs. And as India integrates with the world, this is bound to come down. It's good for the world, but it's also good for India. There's a thinking in India that is going to be difficult, but that's part of the restructuring as India gets integrated to a greater degree in the world. After all, if it's going to be the fourth largest economy by the end of this year, it has to learn to deal with engagement with the world. And trade is always give and take. There will be some gives and some takes. But the longer term belief is that India is on a growth path and these will help it. So there's a general belief that despite the difficult choices, we will come through and the future holds something much better than what the past held for us.
Is it getting more complicated because of what Trump has been saying, that the U.S. played a big role in the ceasefire between India as well as Pakistan?
Yes, that's a strange issue, because he's said almost 20 times now that India has, or he's played a role in preventing a nuclear catastrophe in India and Pakistan, and he said that he's used the trade lever. Now, this is a challenge in multiple ways for India. Because India is very prickly; it does not countenance a third-party interference, as we say, in terms of our bilateral ties with Pakistan. Also, it's a challenge that if you accept that trade can be a lever, that means it will always be used as a lever against India, which wants a balanced partnership with the US. And finally, the Indian contention is that you're equating the victim of terrorism, that is India, with the perpetrator of terrorism, which is state-sponsored terrorism from Pakistan. So for all these reasons, it's unnecessarily complicated, which is an issue which is already fairly complex and difficult. And I see no reason why this was done, and it's been repeated. It just adds to the difficulties at arriving at a mutually suitable agreement. But I think that's what it is. And the Indian negotiators are trying to work this through. It's a difficult situation, but they're confident that they'll get through.
Mr. Akbaruddin, when we talk trade, we talk supply chains. We know that India produces the iPhones, but most of the components actually come from overseas. We know India is trying to source its components locally. There's a plan for that. Do you see sometime down the road that perhaps, the more it seizes the supply chain, the more in trouble it would get with the U.S.?
Yes, this is the new challenge, which again wasn't there on the table at the beginning of the year. In the beginning, we were hearing about friendshoring, nearshoring, etc. But now Trump says onshoring and nothing else. And so this is a challenge, because I think Apple's taken a strategic decision to move part of their production capacities to India. They hope that in the near future, they will have about 25% of iPhones manufactured in India. So this is also one of the give and take in this bigger picture, that India feels that if we are to concede on agriculture, if we are to work out mutually acceptable deals on dairy, then there shouldn't be any more new surprises in terms of tariffs, because iPhone production has now gathered pace in India. It's about 15% of the global production is from India. Recently, much of the exports to US of iPhones are from India. And India's invested a lot. There are subsidies in this. There is a whole ecosystem being built. And we hope that that is not yanked off the table. So part of this deal, which makes it more complex, is also to ensure that once we agree to a trade arrangement, telecom equipment, automobiles equipment, all these will not be off the table, because this is where India sees that it can surge ahead.
Relationships are being reassessed under the Trump administration. Do you see India pivoting more towards Europe or even traditional allies like Russia on the back of that?
So diversification is the name of the game these days. Everybody is promiscuous in their relationships. So you have India would like to have a relationship with the US, which keeps growing, because it's easily one of our most significant relationships. Having said that, I think in a world which is tumultuous, it's always good to have backup and have ties which are diversified, so that if there are any challenges in one relationship, you can bank on the other. So India has also started a discussion with the EU to have a free trade agreement before the end of the year. We are also looking at our long-established ties with Russia, where trade has surged, primarily because of challenges with Russian exports to the West. And so these are all situations of balancing out. Diversification is no longer a theoretical thing. It's something in practice, and that's what everybody does. The USA does it. It wants good relations with China. It wants good relations with Japan. It also wants good relations with India and the Europe. So we are in a flux. So everybody is hedging. Everybody is diversifying.